worst encounter. Bucharest was a girl I noticed because she always tipped as well. I always saw her walking by, always looking down. A mature woman. She had the look of about 40 years, but her beauty made her appear girlish to me. I was a Rom who lost his family and wife to a pogrom at 20. She was Jew, abandoned by her family and all her lovers. Her friends lost to illness, hatred, or suicide. She and I had loss and grief in common. One day we spoke. I invited her to sit with me, to drink with me, to come upstairs. I knew it was a bit fast of me, but she was a fast girl, with sweet, sad eyes. Upstairs she acted scared, a scared fast girl I had never seen before. I asked her what was wrong, and it seemed she did not know. I realized then she was confessed, only discarded, pretending to be fast. A sweet discarded girl who needed me, so I took her with all I had upstairs. She cried so sweetly for me, called me Papa. She was so soft and sweet, beautiful and round. My fist was in her, dripping, and the whole town heard that night. I watched her soft hearts ripple for me. I wanted her so bad. I wanted to put my life into her. But no, not until I had her all. When all was calm, she started to leave. I told her, no, stay. As she started to leave once more, I pinned her to the bed and said, no. She was mine. I claimed her for me. Protesting, she reached for her dress, which I threw out the window. There, see? You aren't going anywhere without me. Every curtain, every cloth, every object she grabbed to try to get away, I snatched and threw out of the window. Soon there was no sheet, no blanket, no anything in the room, save for my own clothes, which I still wore. I clothed, she naked. I told her, no. You're not going to return to your old life. I didn't leave her alone for 3 days. We stayed upstairs in my friend's inn until she relented. I said, marry me. Questioning so frantically, such fear in her face, I told her, I already love you. She didn't believe me, wouldn't believe me. I wouldn't open the door when people knocked from the hallway. I shoved the armoire in front of it to free my hands to hold her. I wouldn't budge till I had my way. 3 days it took. 3 days of tears, of shouting, of grabbing her arm as she leaned out the window. 3 days of holding her onto the bed, whispering into her ear, kissing her tears away. 3 days. And the last morning, my fist in her again. I lay between her legs, thrusting with all my weight. I felt her body give, her legs shaking, her voice breaking. I felt her fluids warm me as she cried out, long and wailing, screaming in tears, no. I yelled in her ear, your ass is next. You do not say no to me. I told her, I'm already taking you. You're already mine. Yes, you, mine. I heard her plead with me, her cries sweet like before. She begged me, please, Papa. Please, 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 Papa. Yes, I said, I am your Papa. Marry your Papa. She begged me again. Papa, I said, marry me. Papa. Marry me. Papa, please, marry me. She cried and cried and cried and cried. I asked her, you're going to be a good girl? The sweet thing that she was, still crying a river, she finally nodded her head. I asked again, you're going to marry your Papa? She nodded her head again, her sweet cries filling my ears. My fist still in her, I thrusted another scream out of her and asked her, yes? She finally said, yeah, Papa, and shook, crying silently, breathlessly as I relieved her of my hand. Our wedding night. That same afternoon she became my wife. Her name, not mine, her body, not mine, all of her, inside and out, are mine. In the courthouse she wore a new dress I bought her, after I washed her, my baby girl. How pretty she looked as I washed her hair, her breath still fluttering from her cries. The armoire moved back. I had 3 girls bring her towels and keep her company. I stepped out and bought her a dress and shawl and a ring. A round, blush-colored gemstone caught my eye. In my mind, I saw her bulbous, blush-pink nipples. It was perfect. That night would be our last in that town, and we stopped by her old place to get some of her things. I told her, don't give notice, for that will make you stay. I'm stealing you away this night. Consequences be damned. No more rental, no more brothel, no more fair weather family. Clothes for a week, and a few keepsakes, were all I'd let her take. She whipped for trinkets from friends who had died, and I wrapped her tight and warm in her shawl and held her. My sad, sad, sweet baby girl. I played our last set with Isadora and Adonis. She wrapped up beside me, her head on my shoulder. We left on horseback, and she sat facing me, dozed off in my arms as we rode. The next place we stayed was an encampment with more friends, who congratulated me with a toast. My baby girl so cute in her nice new dress. She didn't at all resemble the fast girl I had met. I lay with her that night, my wrist in her mouth, her peace ring cry muffled as I transformed her. Familia. Before I first came, what fun we'd have, wandering alone, the two of us. I'd tie her and take her again. What fun to watch her helpless in my power over her. Her voice all pitches high and low, howling like a banshee, her rhythmic spurts making her glisten, dripping, rolling in drops down her fat, fleshy ass crack. By firelight or sunlight, I'd take her, and then leave her tied on our furs on the ground. Her legs still shaking as I cooked for us. I watched and pondered which hole to fuck again. Still tied to herself, I'd sit her up to feed her and keep her tight as I bathed her, scrubbing all her soft parts. I desperately loved watching her swallow, her sweet, precious self trapped and overwhelmed by me. I loved how she wept for me and for herself as I overwhelmed her and gorged myself with her soft, sweet meat. I owned her, I possessed her, locked her tight to me. My sweet, sweet baby girl would know only my authority. No free woman was she. I ruled her every breath, every word, every move. I dressed her, not she. I washed her, not she. I fed her, not she. My baby girl learned over time that she did not own herself at all. Our first children came, Lev and Shiloh, a boy and a girl. Arms over her head as she lay naked on her back, I positioned her legs for her. I pushed and pushed for her. I pushed on her pale pink belly as she labored for me, succumbing herself to her gift for me, her sweetest trust complete. I watched my lover's pale, blush pink vulva make way, tearing open for our beautiful brown babies. It moved me to tears. I watched our babies and wrapped them tight, passed them to my angel. I propped her up and helped them latch themselves to her. I wrapped her as I had wrapped our babies, cozy, warm, and tight, and watched her as she rested with our baby's suckling her. I left her softer parts alone for about 5 weeks. She looked so sweet with our newborns, and I laughed at myself for feeling left out. Sometimes I'd fondle her as she nursed our babies, having a bit of her breast for my enjoyment. In really desperate moments, when the babies were asleep, I placed myself between her breasts, wasting my life onto her beautiful pale chest. I felt so piggish, using her as she had been used by other, less worthy men, as if she had returned to work. I never wanted our lovemaking to feel as it did with other men in any way. I had told her this. I felt awful for breaking my promise. What was more, the babies required such work. We had to rearrange our lives in order to keep our love the way we wanted it, the way I wanted it. She was my baby. I did all for her, but could not do all for her now. When the babies woke in the middle of the night, I wanted to let my wife, my baby girl, sleep, but our babies found her smell more comforting than mine, and so we both stayed up. The babies rested on her breasts, and I wrapped her in my arms in a blanket, and she lay her head on my shoulder. My love, my life, my sunshine, my flower, my angelic, sweet, pretty baby mama always looked so good to me. I couldn't keep my hands off her. Of course we had more, and more children. As they got older, fun with baby girl got tamer. No more rope, no more leaving her on the floor or ground. No more unabashed sunlight fun. Too poor for privacy, I gave my angel my life and love as I had our wedding night at the encampment. Wrist in her mouth, our children kept innocent. At some wee hour in the morning, one child or another would stir and notice. So innocent our children were, they'd ask me, "What are you doing to Mama?" And I'd answer, "I'm tickling her. You go back to sleep now." My wife's embarrassment when a child awoke was too much, and I'd cover her eyes, my wrist in her mouth, pinning her down, keeping her locked in her reverie. No escape. We weren't stopping. I didn't care. It must have looked so cruel to our children, pinning Mama down as she bit my wrist. The embarrassment was indeed painful to her. We'd always start so meek, so quiet, hiding under the blanket. At such time that I had sufficiently overpowered her, I'd tear the blanket away, take her modesty from her agency from her. My wife was still my baby girl, and our children knew it. I bathed her in front of them as they giggled, beat her ass in front of them as they looked on, nursed her wounds, lectured her, and kissed and made up with her in front of them. Her status with Papa was the same as our children's, and our children knew it. My wife, my property, I did with her what I would. She belonged to me. She belonged to our children. Her rounded, fuck. Where am I? Her roundness was mine and theirs. Her breasts were mine and theirs. What was modesty to a growing, impoverished, nomadic family anyway? A fucking pain in the ass, that's what. A waste of time and energy. Who cared if our children knew our bodies? Their bodies came from ours anyway. We made love, made life, and fucking lived. And life was short. I met my baby girl in 1869. We were both 40 years old already. In our time together, she gave me 10 children who live in Shiloh, Bathsheba and Sabine, Aaron and Sophia, Nicola, named after his papa, Ahuva, Hannah, and Saraya. In 1879, the pogroms finished us. We knew it was over that day, having heard from our friends that the village was blocked off. It would only be a matter of time till they found the right house. My tenure on this earth as a Rom who stood his ground was over. Our oldest children, only 10, also knew the end was near. The sweet angels kept their little siblings ignorant and happy with games under the table. My sweet baby girl had a sweet baby bump about 5 months along. Her loving papa fucked and fucked and fucked and fucked and fucked her until we heard the mob. Shoving her naked under the table, I demanded she stay with her children when they came for me, because I thought they wanted only me. For I had developed a reputation for being quick with my trigger, because I was. Many died who tried to fuck with me and my family, and quick. Imagine my grief when I witnessed them bring my barely recognizable little bullet back for my poor sweet love and babies to behold, before they were trapped and burned inside the house we had hidden in. I would happily have committed a murder-suicide had I known. I watched my lover huddle with our babies around me, laying on the table as I was. They hugged and kissed and wept for themselves, each other, and their papa. The flames surrounded them closer and closer. Our children, passed out from the heat of the flames, were spared from too much pain. My poor baby girl was the last to leave. In her in-between state, she smiled because she heard me. I told her, "Hold tight to your papa. I've got you, my baby girl."